The now retired former UFC lightweight champion KHABIB Nurmagomedov is sure to go down in history as one of the greatest martial artists of all time, some might say the greatest, with an undefeated record in the UFC. That is incredibly rare, especially when you factor in that he had to face off against some of the biggest stars in the fighting industry to claim that title. But none of those victories came overnight, no. Each one was the product of a lifetime of dedication to this goal. But you might be thinking, what has any of this got to do with me? How is this relevant to me? I mean, this is a channel about self-improvement, right? What am I doing talking about some martial arts nonsense? And that is where I'd have to stop you, because if you're a UFC fan or you've spent a little bit of time studying Mr. KHABIB, then you'd know his journey and lifestyle has everything to do with self-improvement. Now, I've always had respect for this man, and I'll get into why very shortly. But in preparation for this video, I've had to do a bit more research into his story, and it just confirmed that he was the right person to start off this new series of mine. He is such a role model both inside and outside of the octagon. But yeah, today I'm giving you the first episode of my new series, Inside the Iron Man. For those of you who don't know, the Iron Man is like the uber self-improvement guy. He's hyper masculine, he's successful in his business and social endeavours, but despite that, he stays grounded and seeks to live a virtuous life, even when surrounded by all the negative influences of the modern day. An example always works better to articulate an idea in my experience, so this is why I'm creating this new series to analyse some of the behaviours and characteristics of some real life Iron Men. What traits do they have that have separated them from the weak men of our generation and propelled them into success, wealth and fulfillment? Those are the secrets that I intend to find out and then share with you. And this first installment will be a study of KHABIB Nurmagomedov. My first exposure to KHABIB, like I'm sure many other people's was as well, was that infamous press conference with Conor McGregor. I think it was UFC 229. Now, I wasn't into MMA at the time. I'm pretty sure I watched the clip for the first time a few years after it happened. But sometimes I'll just watch clips of Conor McGregor trash talking for pure entertainment value. We're all guilty of that sometimes. For those of you who don't watch UFC, this is the type of thing that the organisation loves, because when two fighters have been beefing, talking loads of shit to each other, what that's doing is building anticipation for the fight, and people like nothing more than to see two fighters who've been beefing settle it in the ring. And no one was more of a trash talker than Conor McGregor. He was larger than life. That was part of his strategy for mental warfare. He would just wear his opponents down in the pre-fight to the point where they started having doubts, and then he would go off and claim the victory with ease. And that worked with most of his opponents, just not KHABIB. I'll link this clip of the press conference in the description, but in this clip, Conor does everything to try and get in KHABIB's head. He calls him corrupt, he makes fun of his religion, his family. There are a few times when KHABIB looks like he's going to lose his cool and fire a few shots back at Conor, but then he checks himself and he goes back to his calm, stoic demeanour. And this is the first lesson that sets him apart from the weaker men. Instead of engaging in all that petty talk, which is exactly what Conor wanted him to do, KHABIB preferred to let his actions do the talking. Nothing he could have said in that press conference was as effective as the beatdown he gave Conor in round 2 of their fight a few weeks later, and that would eventually lead to KHABIB's round 4 win by submission. Ladies and gentlemen, trash talk does not mean anything if you can't back it up, and in vice versa. If you're so confident in your own abilities, there's no need to talk at all. We need to keep that in perspective when it comes to our day-to-day lives. If someone says something that antagonizes you, don't give them a reaction. Remain stoic. Practice self-control and think before you speak. And whatever your purpose is, the thing you've chosen as your profession, commit yourself completely to this and your goals. Do so to the point where you're so confident in your own abilities that no one can make you doubt yourself. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2 is related to KHABIB's upbringing in the war-torn Republic of Dagestan, far away from all the Western comforts that you and I know. In addition to just growing up in quite a dangerous, politically unstable place, KHABIB's father, who trained him and a lot of other well-known fighters from the region, instilled discipline and a cutthroat attitude in him from a young age. He was doing crazy dangerous things when he was just a kid, like training at high altitude in the mountains or wrestling with an actual bear cub. Apparently where he comes from, it's normal for two kids to pass on the street and their fathers just agree for them to wrestle then and there. It's as much a part of the culture in Dagestan as having a Sunday roast is in the UK. When those challenges are a part of your day-to-day life, you build up a certain level of mental toughness and discipline that makes everything else seem easier by comparison. And that's pretty much the opposite of here. If everyone thinks that getting up early is a mountainous task in itself, then imagine how much worse the rest of the day is going to feel. The lesson here is that there's value to be had in actively seeking out challenge, purposely trying to make our life harder, embracing adversity. We must always embrace adversity. Even the most daunting challenges, that problem in your life that you would rather just ignore, we must face it. That's how we become fearless, by repeatedly making ourselves do scary and challenging things. We mold ourselves into a stronger character who can do those things without a second thought. And we don't have to be wrestling bears like KHABIB. For us, it can be something as simple as pulling our face away from our phone screen for once and striking up a conversation with someone we don't know. And comparatively, after doing that hard task, everything else will seem easier. Just like KHABIB, all he ever knew growing up was adversity. So by the time he made it to the UFC, he already had the mindset of a champion. Don't make life easier for yourself. Embrace the everyday challenges that are coming your way. The final thing that I'm going to tell you about KHABIB might be the thing that sets him apart from every other fighter and most other athletes, to be honest. KHABIB has a very strong moral compass, and unfortunately for someone with his level of success, that's unusual. Particularly in the UFC, which prefers fighters that trash talk and tear their opponents down. KHABIB never compromised on his morals. He's a man of faith, the first Muslim UFC champion, and that was a driving force for him during his mixed martial arts career. In between training sessions, he always took time to practice his faith. After every fight he won, he thanked God, and he never took his position for granted. That gratitude will come through in the way he treated his opponents. He never trash talk, and he always showed respect. And also in his loyalty to the ones who made him, his team and his family. No matter how many times it might have been more convenient for KHABIB to get a new coach, like think of all the places he was going to for the fights and the training, and he's probably getting offers from the top UFC coaches. I could understand his reasons for doing something like that, but no, he always kept his family and friends in the spotlight. That's brotherhood. That's what we love to see on this channel. No matter what level of success you accrue, don't compromise on your morals. Betraying your beliefs and the people that made you might speed up the journey a little bit, but holding on to your integrity, that makes you a man who shows loyalty and takes care of the ones he loves. As much as I respect KHABIB as a fighter, living a virtuous life, never compromising his morals, and being a good man is the most impressive title he ever earned.